We get to Shakespeare. He's our latest author, and we'll be reading his play written in poetry, A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's a cliche in English that we will say a man that needs no introduction of some famous or sort of famous person. That's a cliche, but I suppose about Shakespeare it's true. You know about Shakespeare. He's the most famous writer in English, perhaps the most famous writer in world literature. The saying that he needs no introduction is perhaps true in a more important way, that you don't need to know anything. All you need is the words. And in fact, the things that you know without having read may not be helpful. It might be worthwhile just to forget them. Some writers are always present in a big way in what they write, and everything they write, all of their fiction, is in some way autobiography. They're always telling their own story. That's the way some writers are, and there are good writers of that kind. Other writers go the opposite direction. They're much less interested in themselves and much more interested in what they're writing about, and they're much more interested in the people on the page rather than their own selves. And Shakespeare is on that side of things. He's far to that extreme. He's curious about the people that he writes about, and he never puts in any character, no matter how small, without giving them a human soul and human motivations. Even the greatest villains, the most purely evil people, he wants to know what's in their hearts. So Shakespeare needs no introduction in that the words by themselves will stand up, and they're enough. They are beautiful poetry, and you may have been in school so long, and you being in school and studying what teachers tell you to do has been so much a part of your life. You perhaps are sick of it by now, or just more interested in getting out of the world and doing stuff. And then when you get out of the world and you've been doing stuff for a little while, it may occur to you that there was a privilege when you were in school, and it was your job to deal sometimes with the most beautiful things of human production. And this is one of those times. For the next 2 weeks, it is your job. It is your work in life to absorb the beauty of this perfect work of art. Don't blow it. The chance is rare in life, and by the time you get to what you're eager for now, being launched on your life and career, for most of you, this privilege will be over. Might as well enjoy it while it's here. So we have this play, and of course the language is quite difficult. It's old-fashioned language, and it's presented with a high degree of formality. It's Shakespeare didn't write just words down, and didn't write the sort of thing a person would say. He put it all in poetry, so that adds a complication. And in the 400 years since Shakespeare wrote the play, the language has changed somewhat, and so that's harder. The compensation with Shakespeare is that there are many aids, and you can find enough to help you. I've chosen an edition with lots of notes and helpful definitions, and you'll see little numbers in the lines, and if you look at the bottom of the page, you look up the numbers, you can get an explanation for what the unfamiliar words mean. If he uses them in ways that we no longer do, you can get an explanation in modern English. There are many helps in that edition, and I'm sure you can find with the internet and other modern tools, you can find any grade of help you want. One thing I would like to ask of you is don't lean on the help so much that you don't experience the real thing. This is your chance to read this book with a little help and guidance. You have motivation to actually experience it and go through it. It's one of the high pleasures of life, but it is possible to go through an entire life without ever having that pleasure. Don't give up your chance. You can't enjoy food in the same way if you just read restaurant reviews and you never go actually eat it. So have the meal yourself. Don't just read some academics or some scholars' description of what the meal would be. And that said, use whatever tools help you understand. It is a complicated task to dive into this poem, but it's worth it. It's hard to crack the surface, but the nut inside is delicious. Now, this is a play and a comedy. For Shakespeare, a comedy means a story about love. This is often still true today. It comes, just to get to the basics, it comes in 5 acts. An act is a subdivision of a play, just as a chapter is a subdivision of a book. And then the acts are further divided into scenes, and then within the scenes, each line of speech that some character or other says is numbered, so specific places can be found according to the act. That's the biggest division. The scene, that's smaller, and then the line number. I've borrowed a painting, and many visual artists used Midsummer Night's Dream for illustration. So this is a central event, and not today's reading. We will get to this later. But the lowest of the low, made even lower by magic, a man transformed into half an animal, has an encounter with the highest of the high, a queen among gods. We'll get to that. But to begin, we have other business. Now, there are 4 ranks among the characters of this play, and the action is complicated because it has independent levels of this society that are working with each other, and it's sometimes interacting. But it looks at this whole world from top to bottom and gives it a certain complexity. It's set in ancient Athens, and it shares the religion of that time, so a polytheistic pagan religion, which then has a lot in common with the sort of a common religion of England, the holdover, not Christianity in any explicit way, but the holdover from earlier pre-Christian England, that a belief in fairies and magic, kind of nature religion that persists in societies, whatever their most advanced theology is. And that's the rank that we haven't met yet. We will meet them when we start Act 2. There is a king of the gods called Oberon, who is the companion of the queen of the gods, Titania. We saw her picture. And they are having a hard time with one another. They're having a fight. And that causes disturbances in other parts of the play. But that's the highest rank, the gods and goddesses. So divine people who are capable of magic, such as turning Bottom, the ordinary Athenian weaver, into half an animal. So that's the highest, the gods. And then below them are the people we meet first, Theseus and Hippolyta. Theseus is the traditional mythical king of Athens, a child of the gods, so a mortal man, but with divine ancestry, a great hero who has stories told about him, founding the city of Athens. And the woman he is about to marry, Hippolyta, who still shows up in current myths and stories. These characters are traditional, their stories are not set. There are many different versions. Apparently DC Comics has taken over Hippolyta. But she was an Amazon queen, so the Amazons were a race of women warriors who fought wars sometimes with the Athenians. And this is what we learn first, that Theseus has conquered the Amazons and has ended up with the queen of the Amazons to be his wife. And they are about to be married. And that event organizes the plot. So that's the second rank. Underneath the gods are these half-gods, so traditional mythical figures with special powers above ordinary mortals. Next, there are the highborn Athenians, or the free Athenians. And these have a number of young lovers among them. The number is 4, and these are our natural protagonists. If we have identity with the characters, if we get rooting interest, that's naturally where our interest goes, toward these young lovers. So there are 2 men and 2 women. They don't quite sort themselves out into couples. That's what gets the action going. If they had 1 man for 1 woman and another man for another woman, that would be fine. But they are all crossed up, and that's the basic complication that we see at first. So the rank on the level with us are the noble or the freeborn Athenians. And then underneath there's a lower layer that you see in scene 2, traditionally called the mechanicals, because they have ordinary jobs. They work in trades. There's a tailor and a bellows mender and a carpenter, a joiner who makes drawers and cabinets. So these are the lower class of Athens, people who work for a common living. And we saw the picture of Bottom after magic has transformed him into half an animal. In some way, one of the leaders of this group of lower people is prominent in this play. So we see these 4 ranks, and keeping them straight is essential to keeping the story straight. But then the story is that they get all mixed up, and that is in fact the picture that we were looking at. The lowest rank meets the highest rank, and the things do not say the same. And this is typical of comedy. The things do not stay in their lanes, in their prescribed areas. And so comedies are about ranks, but also the mixing of ranks, and also love. Those go together because love has power to change people. And sometimes through love, people can jump up out of their station or are lowered down below it. So we see that both of those things have happened to Bottom, that because of love, he is numbered among the gods and the goddesses and the magical creatures, but because of love, he is reduced below a human being into an animal. But to get back to the action of scene 1, what we see is not that yet, but we start with the freeborn Athenians and the lovers. So